It's too much chaos we have to deal with all these different tools where we can't just stay focused enough. The data's spread out everywhere. If we want to get into an AI discussion, definitely not ready for AI. 100% not ready for AI. AI really works better. AI aligns perfectly with a security framework. Security framework cares about the data. We've been, cybersecurity, in my opinion, has even kind of been broken by this approach. And AI is really going to help open up a lot of people's eyes to that. As they try to use AI, they're going to be like, if I'm using 20 different vendors and my data is spread out between 20 different vendors, each one of those vendors has to come out with an AI solution for me to be able to use AI with that set of data. And then even more importantly, how are they all going to talk to each other if they don't have well-developed APIs? So there is this drive for these bigger companies that are trying to create a single pane of glass to make it seem like everything's in. All it is a UI, a bunch of disparate databases all trying to connect to each other with half-baked APIs. My clients want to sleep better at night. We do. How I sleep best at night is knowing that I'm aligning well with a security framework. And I struggle to do that with how spread out our data is everywhere. Getting your data in a single place so that it's easier to secure for both you and your clients. There's a ton of shadow IT out there, even with our clients, where we don't necessarily manage 100% of their infrastructure. And I kind of blame Apple on this. They had those commercials when the iPhone came out, and they trained a whole generation of people of there's an app for that. Now this generation's in the workforce where they may not be getting the support they need from management or IT around adopting better processes with the applications they're currently using, and they just go out and find their own app. By the time IT does find out about it, if IT disagrees with the decision, that's not something IT can just flip a switch off of, because it's now part of how that company runs and makes money. So you might be able to go to the employee's manager and say, hey, this shouldn't be used. But if the manager doesn't understand what we understand, or we can't properly communicate that from a business use case perspective, they're just going to keep using it because it solves that problem. In all honesty, it was the easy button. That's part of this echo chamber that is our MSP channel too, is all about creating the easy button to help us sleep better at night. And it's all, which creates this way of doing things in a popular way. If we feel like we're doing it just like everyone else is, we must be doing it right, when you could call out what's being done wrong fairly easily, especially if you look at a security framework.
So obviously our organizations are working together. ITECH Solutions is a customer of Tech Stack, and you kind of came to us with the idea of trying to consolidate that stack, consolidate that data. How many easy buttons did you press to get to the point where you needed to maybe undo some of those decisions along the way?
Man, I'm definitely a shiny object guy. I pressed a lot of easy buttons and then regretting it and spending a lot of money, quite frankly, trying out a new tool, thinking it was the best thing since sliced bread, before I realized, oh, this is the same thing over and over again. It's almost the definition of insanity. I was doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results, and looking at people around me that were almost accepting it as this is just part of how we run our business, which then leads me to believe that, okay, well, if these inefficiencies and difficulties that you're accepting by always jumping to the easy button, right, is how you run your business, now you're in a situation where you have to throw humans at your problem. So as you grow and scale your company, rather than be more efficient with processes, with better tool framework that where all your data is not dispersed everywhere, you're just throwing more humans at it at that point. And I don't know, I haven't met one person that says, yeah, I want to grow a business where it requires the most humans possible to run. We're always looking at a way to require less humans to get things done. Because why? Humans make mistakes, and that introduces human error. You're always just throwing humans at the problem, when the underlying issue is that the framework that's been built to scale from, it's not the proper scaffolding to use, and things are falling through the cracks. Ultimately, my next question is, well, if that means putting all your eggs in a basket, right? And that's another pushback that I see in our industry, is there's always been this thought of we should spread our eggs out, right? Just in general, it's like never have too many eggs in one basket, because you're worried about all those eggs breaking at once. If you spread them out and eggs in a basket break, it's just that one basket, right? There's a happy medium. It shouldn't be spread out and throw a tool at every single little problem you have thinking it's going to solve it, because now you've created more problems than you had in the first place. How do you do more with less? How do you look at the tools that are already out there offering solutions? And really, in what I call this information war that we're in with threat actors, right? We've got threat actors. It's a type of war that governments can't protect us in, like a traditional war, because it's civilians attacking civilians, right? How do we protect? Who's really there to protect us? Who's building the foundation? Who's the one doing it right? Well, it's got to come from enterprise. It's never going to come from a small business. They just don't have the investment power, especially if they've got PE firms misdirecting funds that would normally go into R&D and innovation and further development of their product because it's more commoditized. You're never going to get that from an SMB or a mid-market. It's got to be enterprise who works with enterprise. So then you're looking at the Googles, the Microsofts, the Amazons, right? And yeah, I've looked at Google, I've looked at Amazon. Really, Microsoft is who stands out. And the reason I say that is that's what all our clients use. That's where we manage users for our clients. The best way to protect your data is to also have it be the same framework that your users and that you're managing users and devices with.
What are like some of the biggest hurdles that you're running into deciding to take the sprawl of apps and solutions, and there's an app for that kind of mentality, and centralizing that on MSP?
So Microsoft is focused only on enterprise. And in my opinion, rightfully so. When I look at their business model, they shouldn't focus on SMB or even mid-market, because the enterprise is really going to drive the most innovation in their products from an investment standpoint and even a demand standpoint, right? The SMB clients don't demand enough to really drive innovation for a company. And so if anything, I look at these MSP channel vendors who are servicing MSPs that are SMBs, who are servicing SMBs, they're limiting their maturity and growth because their target audience is less mature. Microsoft is driven by enterprise that needs to be on the forefront of technology and needs the best protection because they're targeted by threat actors like no other. When threat actors are targeting companies, they know there's a much bigger gold mine with an enterprise company or even an MSP, because then they get into an MSP, they got the keys to the kingdom to several other companies, right? And so yeah, there's an issue where a lot of, in the IT industry, in my opinion, there's some undeserved hate for Microsoft, mainly because people feel like SMBs like us, they feel like Microsoft isn't there for them, isn't going to be there to support them. When I look at Microsoft and put myself in Microsoft's shoes, they're really looking at CSPs to help connect the dots from enterprise to SMB. And CSPs, because they're now financially driven by PE firms that have invested into them, they can't make enough revenue doing that. Or maybe they haven't figured it out, right? It's really more of a consulting play than it is a selling license play. It's kind of like they look at Microsoft and they go, that's not the easy button. We can't make money easily with that. So they end up carrying a lot of competing vendors on their line card as a CSP to then make up for the revenue they can't make with Microsoft, ultimately shoehorning them into being able to take a Microsoft first approach. I'd love it if a CSP came out and really just took a Microsoft first approach. And really that's focusing more around consulting and how to help SMB connect the dots and understand what we're going to help create an easy button for Microsoft for you, because Microsoft doesn't have the time or the focus to be able to do it themselves. And Microsoft is really the only company focusing on AI for business from a holistic approach, right? You've got Salesforce that just came out with Agentforce, which is going to, in my opinion, save their bacon, because Dynamics is going to be a big competitor for them in the future. Huge competitor. They don't realize it now, maybe they're denying it. But, and then it's, what are you doing in Salesforce versus everything else in Microsoft? And what does that disconnect look like? Are we going to rely on a heavy API connection, or are you going to start seeing companies realize Salesforce is kind of expensive? What would that look like to bring over to the Microsoft environment with Dynamics, where all of our other data sits? And how much more could we do if it was all sitting in the same place, especially with AI? We used to be more focused on cybersecurity, naturally, especially with the event we went through. And what I realized with AI, because it aligns with the security framework so well, in order to use AI, cybersecurity is just a necessity. We need to build wisdom around your data that we can share with AI, which is all cybersecurity when it comes down to it. So you're pivoting from this fear, uncertainty, and doubt conversation. It's more, let's get your data in line. And even talking to a company about their data, that's something they can relate to, especially as a business outcome. They may not relate to an event that may or may not happen to them as a business outcome they care about, but they can relate to understanding all the data they require to run their company. Like, and if they lost that data, you know, how detrimental that would be, or if that data got out to the wrong people or competitors or employees are leaving with the data when they shouldn't leave with the data. So you really start out with a data focus, with the idea that not only is this to clean up their data and help consolidate the chaos they may be dealing with all these different apps and shadow IT that are causing inefficiencies in their operations. And even when from a total cost of ownership, you know, one easy button is one thing. When you got 20 easy buttons, well, what's the total cost of ownership around managing all those easy buttons? You know, I interviewed a couple other companies, and I loved the direction you guys were going, because you already had out of the box solved a lot of missing pieces that were in the MSP channel around, you know, CRM, sales, project management. Those are all bolt-on tools to PSAs in the MSP channel. And right out of the gate, I loved what you guys were doing there. So we decided, you know, basically to partner with you guys to help build this out, to make sure we're bringing in all of the aspects required to be able to use Dynamics to ultimately fulfill pillar number one in NIST. If you want to talk about another security framework, pillar number one is identify. And this goes back to AI. We can't identify all of the data and assets and everything we were responsible for managing in a single place, a single source of truth. We're already cutting ourselves short. We're already creating inefficiencies in our process. So step one is, do we have a single dataverse, as Microsoft likes to call it, that contains all the data that we're responsible for managing, maintaining, especially around change control and cybersecurity, right? Where really tech stack is acting as the dev arm. You know, what is ITECH here? I'm bringing in, I guess, IP around what's needed from an IT standpoint in a database that Microsoft hasn't developed out yet. Every company is a technology company first. You can't deliver your products and services without technology. So let's get IT whipped into shape first. Then let's add on the HR module, because guess what? You need humans to deliver your products and services too. Once you have the technology in place, you need humans to use the technology, right? So I'm already thinking about the path that we're going to be working with our enterprise clients as far as getting them their IT whipped into shape on a single platform, and then trying to get HR more involved in that and creating that more of a symbiotic relationship where it's all the same system. And obviously tech stack, I love that you guys are going to take this to the MSP channel, and I'm going to help advocate for that, you know, as a user. And being a big part of helping get all this set up to be ready to use for the MSP channel around best practices that are currently being followed with other tools that we're going to have baked into this platform, without having to rely on a slow roadmap from a PSA vendor where it may or may not get added, because let's face it, it's a shared infrastructure at that point. They're not going to add a feature that you may want unless enough other people want it to make it worth their investment. When you've got your own, again, this database is in your own Microsoft Dataverse, your own tenant. We're talking better security at that point as well.